Okay. Thank you everybody for joining. Let's jump right in. These classes are available to be sponsored. The sponsor class helps us keep these classes going. Okay, thank you very much. And let's start. This week's Torah portion is Parsha's Boy. It talks about the Exodus of Egypt, the last three plagues, and the Exodus. And in Exodus chapter 12, we read about the God giving the commandment to Moses and Aaron that the Jewish people should have a carbon Pesach, the Passover offering, and specifically they should take the blood, they should put it on the doorposts, and God is going to pass through Egypt and pass over, which is where the holiday gets its name, Pesach, Passover, the doorposts of the Jews, and only hurt the non-Jews, specifically the Egyptians, the firstborns of all the Egyptians. So let's read in the last part of this in verses 12 and 13 in chapter 12. In Exodus chapter 12, verse 12. I will pass through the land of Egypt on that night, and I will strike every firstborn and in the land of Egypt, from man to beast, and against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgments. I am God. The blood will be for you as a sign on the houses where you are. I will see the blood, and I will pass over you. There will be no plague against you when I strike the land of Egypt. And again, Moses says this to the Pharaoh. And Moses says in chapter 11 that this is what God has said: about the time of midnight I will go out within Egypt. Every firstborn in the land of Egypt, will die, from the firstborn of Pharaoh sitting on the throne, to the firstborn of the slave girl behind the millstones, and every firstborn animal. Okay, and then in the last part he says, then all these your servants will come down to me and prostrate themselves, saying, go, you and all the people who follow you, then I will go out. Okay, so the question is, what does it mean that God will go into Egypt, and what does it mean God will go out of Egypt? So let's take a step back. So all the other makkahs, all the other plagues, we don't see anywhere that it says that God had to go out into Egypt, right? Like, for example, some of the plagues it says the hand of God will be upon your livestock. God will distinguish the livestock of the Israelites and livestock of the Egyptians. I will strike you and your people with pestilence, and the like. Right? It doesn't say anywhere that God went out into Egypt. In other words, God is the dominion over the world. What does it mean he's going out of Egypt, going out into Egypt? And we see that that there was something very special about what God did, that that he managed. He's God. He could do anything. All the Jewish people, all the Egyptian firstborns were killed. Excuse me. In one moment. In one moment, which obviously it's something that God had to go out into the entire Egypt, right? It had to be at many places at once, if you will. So the idea of passing through, so we have, again, on the one hand, God is passing through Egypt would indicate that God is just doing what he has to do, but going out implies that that God is personally involved. And if you look in the Haggadah actually explains this verse, and it says, God took us out of Egypt, and he says as follows: I will pass through the land on Egypt on that night, and I will strike every firstborn in the land of Egypt, and against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgments. I am God. I am not an angel. I am not a seraph. I am not a messenger. I, God, it is I and none other. So over here, we see something special about the fact that God says, I'm going to do it. So again, we have this idea that God's going to do it. Not only he's going to pass through, but again, later in the verse it says, I am going to go out. And In Tanya chapter 46, the Alter Rebbe explains as follows. God set aside the upper and lower realms and chose none but the Jewish people to be his nation and took them out of Egypt, a place of nakedness and filth, not via a messenger, but God himself, in his own glory, descended there, as it says, I will descend to save him, to bring them close to the true unity and genuine soul connection. So again, here we see in the Tanya discusses this idea that God is that God himself going indicates the this connection that God is forging with the Jewish people. So even though God has many messengers, he could have sent, like we say, like a saraf, a malach. And we'll see also if we look in the Orach Chaim, he says as follows: although I have various assistants, I myself will descend into Egypt. Their exodus shall be through me personally, because I cherish my children. So the Orach Chaim, very important rabbi from the 17th, 18th century, also explains the same idea. Okay. Now, the second thing that we see, besides God himself punishing the Egyptians and doing this plague, it did not affect the Jewish people. So let's see what Rashi explains on verse 13 that we said before. So it says, I will pass over them. Upasachti alehem, I will pass over them. So what does that mean? Rashi explains, if an Egyptian was in an Israelite's house, one might think that he would escape. Therefore, the verse says, the affliction shall not be upon you, but it will be upon the Egyptians who happen to be in your home. So, first of all, if an Egyptian thought he was going to outsmart God, hide in a Jewish home, didn't work. And the second thing that Rashi points out is, if an Israelite was in an Egyptian's house, one might think he will be struck together with him. Therefore, the verse states, the affliction shall not be upon you wherever you may happen to be. Okay, so Rashi explains, based on the Medrash, that if a Jew was in a non-Jewish, in an Egyptian house, he would also be saved. So, here's the question. The $1,000,000 question is, why would a Jew be in an Egyptian's house? We're talking about the night of the Seder, the night of the first Seder, the night where the Jewish people are commanded to make a korban Pesach, to do the Passover offering. And somehow, a Jew ends up in a place in an Egyptian's house. Now, let's take a step back about how important was this idea of the korban Pesach. Now, the first thing is, number one, that actually the Jewish people were commanded, no one shall go out of the doorway of his house until morning. So obviously, a Jew should not be in an Egyptian's house on that night, because they were commanded by God through Moses not to do that. Number one. Number two, we all know the suffering that the Jewish people had through the pharaohs and through the Egyptians, to the point where even though that the pharaohs have been blessed by Joseph and by Jacob, the Torah tells us that there was a new king. Either it was a new king literally that did not know Joseph and chose to ignore that, or if it was a new king, some of the commentaries say, it was the same guy, but he refused to acknowledge the goodness that Joseph had done for him personally. Now, after all that, they see the Jewish people. The Jewish people see Egypt crumble, and they see all the 10 plagues, and he knows what's going to happen. He knows that what's going to happen to the Egyptians, and this Jew is still sitting in a non-Jew's house, in an Egyptian's house. Not only is he sitting in an Egyptian's house, he's sitting in an Egyptian house of a firstborn, which he knows what's going to happen to him. Or in the case, he might even invite an Egyptian firstborn into his house, where he's sitting and eating a Passover offering. So maybe we would think that such a person is unfit to maybe such a person is unfit to be saved. Not only that, we see also that there were Jews. The Jewish people had no merits. That's what the Haggadah tells us. What the Torah tells us. The Jewish people had no merits to be redeemed, and the only reason they were redeemed was because of the to the point where they didn't even want to be involved in Passover offering. So God made a miracle, and the Jewish people essentially were able to smell the scent of Gan Eden, in the Garden of Eden, and therefore, because they smelled this, they won't want to be part of it. And God said, Moses said to the Jewish people, "You want to be part of it? You have to do circumcision." So all the Jewish people, even the ones who did no mitzvahs and nothing, had no merits, they all get involved in this mitzvah because they were so excited about it. And, and nonetheless, this Jew is inviting an Egyptian into his house, or he's going to an Egyptian house, even though he knows about this. And we see actually that there were actually Jews who didn't want to leave Egypt. There were Jews who refused to believe in the redemption. And the Torah actually tells us, and the Talmud tells us, I should say, in the Jerusalem Talmud, in Rosh Hashanah, page 3, or if it's chapter 3, whatever it is, he says as follows. It explains that actually there were some wealthy Jewish people, and there was kind of a class of Jewish people who were not slaved, and not only that, they actually owned Jewish slaves. And in fact, part of the idea of the 10 plagues was to show these Jewish people that actually there was, to show them how, and by seeing the Egyptian economy and the whole Egyptian nation fall apart through the 10 plagues, it was to show them that what the truth was, that God runs the world, and that there's something beyond the material. And when God said that they have to let the slaves go, it included the Jewish people who had slaves. So, in fact, to the point where the Egyptians had to drive the Jews out. They were so involved in the non-Jewish culture, in the Egyptian culture, that there were people who were so stuck in the galus, in the exile, that they didn't want to leave, and they're inviting Egyptians to their house on the night of Passover, or they're going to an Egyptian house on the night of Passover. And nonetheless, what does God do? He saves them. He saves every single one of these people who are the lowest of the low, seemingly. So what is the lesson for us? The lesson for us is that we have to be engaged with every single Jew. We have to be engaged with every Jew, no matter what their status is. We might think, well, this person, he doesn't deserve it. This person has gone too far. Or we might take a different approach and say, this Jew, he deserves to be involved in Judaism, but on my terms, on the terms of Judaism, which means he has to come to the study hall, to the synagogue, to my house. He has to come. We're going to sit down. We're going to teach him the entire Torah, and then we'll start talking to him about the wonderful beauty of Judaism. No. What does God do? We have to learn from God. God himself went down to the lowest place. And obviously, we have to follow Jewish law, only be in appropriate places, but we have to go to the lowest places. We have to go to places, we have to meet people on their level, and we have to engage with them. We have to engage with every single Jew. It's not enough that we engage with people who we want to be engaged with, and it's not enough that we be engaged with them on our terms. We have to be engaged with every Jew, whether it's family, friends, people who you've never met. Every single Jew needs to be brought closer. We'll end off with a story. There's a famous rabbi in Israel. His name is Rabbi Yitzchak Grossman. And he was born and bred in Jerusalem, in the Mea Shearim neighborhood. For those who know that area of Jerusalem, very, very, let's just say, very religious area, very pious area. People, they don't tolerate other people who are involved with, not involved in Judaism to their level. That's the way they are. And this young rabbi gets a job. He's offered to be a rabbi in Migdal Emek in Israel, which was a very, very downtrodden area at that time. There was a lot of gang activity. There was a lot of youth homelessness and drugs and unemployment. It was a very, very bad situation. And Rabbi Grossman goes and he asked them, "Is there a yeshiva here?" And they say, "Yeshiva? What's a yeshiva?" They didn't even know what a yeshiva was. And he's like, "Okay, so where are the kids? Are they, if they're not in yeshiva, are they in synagogue? Is there a Talmud Torah?" They say, "No." He said, "So where are the kids?" This is in the 1970s. So they said, "Well, they're at the disco." He said, "Okay, what's disco? Maybe it's a yeshiva called disco." He didn't know. He had no idea. He walks in and he comes in and he sees what a disco is. As he likes to say, it was put in the middle of the year. And he goes there and they said, "Maybe you need a minion." And he's like, "No, I want to talk to the kids. I want to talk to you." And they said, "Why don't you go back to Jerusalem?" He said, "No, I'm here. I'm here to talk to you." And eventually became known as the disco rabbi. He would go to the disco and talk to kids outside and get them involved. And he helped many, many kids, put them in proper homes. And his home also started looking like a disco with the kids that were coming in and out. And he was till today. He's building institutions of in Migdal Emek, and you might see some of his solicitations where he's raising money for orphanages and wonderful programs that have been modeled in the entire country of Israel. And all because this rabbi wouldn't just sit in his home in Jerusalem and say, "Well, wait till someone knocks on my door." He didn't just go to, Migdal Emek and say, "I'm waiting till somebody knocks on my door in Migdal Emek." He said, didn't wait. He didn't go to the synagogue and say, "Well, I'll wait till someone comes there." He went to the place where the people were, and they weren't in the best of place. But that was how this rabbi was able to build a connection with these young kids and save thousands of kids from drugs and and all kinds of terrible crime. And that this is the lesson we learned from God. So it's an important lesson that we have to learn that not everybody always is ready to meet us on our level. We got to go to them. Wishing you a great Shabbos. If you have any questions or comments, we love the feedback, and we will see you, God willing, next week.